All right, whenever you're ready, go ahead and begin your individual oral. Just remember to state your chosen text and the global issue you're focusing on before moving into your analysis.
So, today I want to talk about a powerful extract from Black Like Me by John Howard Griffin. It's a memoir from 1961 where Griffin, a white journalist, darkens his skin to experience life as a black man in the racially segregated southern United States. The extract I'm focusing on is from November 25th and takes place in Montgomery, Alabama. It captures a really important moment during the civil rights movement, where Griffin observes a shift in the mindset of the black community, from hopelessness to a determined, peaceful resistance. The main issue I'm exploring is racial injustice and systemic inequality. What's striking in this piece is how Griffin shows racism as more than just personal prejudice. He reveals how it's embedded in everyday systems, through laws, institutions, social behaviors, and how those systems try to control and limit progress for black Americans. He starts the extract by saying, "The Negro's feeling of utter hopelessness is here replaced by a determined spirit of passive resistance." That contrast, hopelessness versus determination, sets the tone. It shows that something has changed in Montgomery. The people aren't just enduring racism anymore, they're actively resisting it, but doing so peacefully and with dignity. A major influence here is Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Griffin compares King's nonviolent philosophy to Gandhi's, and he emphasizes that what's happening in Montgomery is more than political, it's moral and spiritual. The phrase nonviolent and prayerful resistance really shows that the movement is rooted in deeper values. Griffin contrasts this quiet strength with the aggressive behavior of white racists. He describes scenes where white men deliberately provoke black men, like blowing cigarette smoke in their faces, just hoping to spark a violent reaction. It's disturbing, and it shows how some white people try to manipulate the narrative so they can claim victimhood while still holding power. He also highlights something powerful about leadership. He says that while other southern cities lacked unity, Montgomery had rallied around King. This shows how important shared purpose and organized leadership are in resisting systemic oppression. Then there's his take on the white population. He writes, "I could not make out the white viewpoint in Montgomery. It was too fluid, too changeable." That line really stuck with me. It suggests confusion or even denial, as if white people were torn between maintaining the status quo and recognizing the legitimacy of the resistance. Griffin uses metaphors like blocks of concrete, immovable, to describe how entrenched racial identities are, and he says that for white people, the issue has been reduced from one of justice to who would win. That's a chilling thought. That human rights are treated like a contest for dominance rather than a question of morality. He also outlines the fears on both sides. Black citizens fear being falsely accused or arrested. They worry that any act of violence, even one they didn't commit, could be used as an excuse to crack down on their movement. On the other side, whites fear intermingling, a vague term that masks a deeper fear of losing racial control. One of the most important points Griffin makes is that white society wants to impose responsibilities on black people, like paying taxes or serving in the military, without granting them the rights that go with those responsibilities. That's a clear sign of systemic inequality. The extract paints racism not just as hate, but as a calculated system, one that uses fear, manipulation, and control to maintain power. And because Griffin is both insider and outsider, a white man living as a black man, his perspective is really unique. He can see how both sides think, and that allows him to expose truths that others might miss. This ties directly to the larger issue of racial injustice worldwide. What Griffin saw in Montgomery reflects patterns we've seen in other places, in history and today. For example, during apartheid in South Africa, black South Africans also used nonviolent protest against a system that denied them basic rights. Like Montgomery, their resistance was often met with violence. But the moral power of peaceful protest made the world pay attention. In the US today, movements like Black Lives Matter continue this legacy. Protesters are often peaceful, yet they're treated with suspicion or outright violence. It's a reminder that even now, systemic racism is deeply rooted in law enforcement, politics, and economics. This issue isn't limited to the US. In Brazil, Afro-Brazilians face high rates of poverty and police violence. In France, people of North African descent are often racially profiled. And in the UK, the Windrush scandal showed how governments can erase identity and rights through bureaucratic injustice. Griffin helps us understand how these systems work, not just through laws, but through emotions. Myths of inferiority, myths of danger. These stories justify inequality while making it look like fairness or tradition. That's why changing the law isn't enough. We also have to change the way people think and feel. His narrative doesn't just document injustice. It challenges the reader to recognize their own role in it and to listen to the voices that society often ignores.
You emphasize the role of fear in maintaining systemic racism. Why do you think Griffin chose to focus on emotional responses as much as policy or law?
That's a great question. I think Griffin understood that the real engine of racism isn't always in government or official policy. It's in how people feel. Fear, guilt, resentment. These are the emotions that keep inequality alive. And those feelings aren't random. They're passed down, reinforced by culture, and used to justify injustice. For example, the fear of intermingling isn't about safety, it's about losing control. Griffin shows how these emotions shape both action and inaction. And by exploring them, he makes the reader confront things they might not want to admit.
You mentioned that Black Like Me is non-fiction. Do you think it would be as powerful if it were fiction?
Fiction can be powerful, absolutely. But in this case, the fact that it's non-fiction is essential. Griffin really lived this. He faced the danger. That adds credibility. It also forces readers, especially white readers of his time, to take the issue seriously. They can't dismiss it as made up or exaggerated. And because he was a white man crossing the color line, he exposed truths that many white readers might never have believed if they came from a black writer. It puts the burden of listening back on the reader.
Earlier you discussed nonviolent resistance. Do you believe it's still an effective strategy today?
Yes, I really do. Nonviolence has a unique power. It keeps the moral high ground and exposes the injustice of the oppressor. When protesters stay peaceful and still face brutality, it reveals where the real violence is coming from. Of course, awareness alone isn't enough. Nonviolence needs to be paired with real structural change, changes in policy, in education, in economics. But without it, change can lose focus or legitimacy. So yes, I think nonviolence is still vital.
One last question. How would you sum up Griffin's main message in this extract?
I'd say his core message is that dignity, unity, and moral clarity are stronger than hate and fear. He's showing us that systemic racism can be resisted with courage, with discipline, and with truth. But he also warns that real progress means confronting uncomfortable realities, including our own biases and the myths we've been taught. His extract isn't just a snapshot of a moment in history, it's a call to action, and a reminder that justice isn't just about laws, it's about who we choose to be.